What if you found an early version of Roblox? You walk around the test map for a while and you realize there's something else in the game with you, like something is stalking you, and the more you play the demo place, the more it changes for the worse. CDARCHIVE is a channel that was created on July 12, 2024. The channel has a total of 16 videos. The channel's bio reads, archiving unique things on an old compact disc. So this ARG is much like other archived footage channels. Without wasting any time, let's watch the first video, demo gameplay.mov. The entry opens with a very foggy game. By the title, demo gameplay.mov, he's playing a demo version of Roblox. We know this by the description, reading, exploring the demo of the 2010 Roblox installer disc. You can also barely see anything that is a few studs ahead of you because of the fog. The game has a traditional happy home with a couch inside, a trampoline, and trees. In the background of the video, it plays this very eerie sounding track the whole way through, making the atmosphere all that more creepy. The player then wanders to the back of the house and sees this. I can't make anything of it, it just looks like a red block on the ground, but the audio and the recording do glitch out and ends the recording, so it must be important for later. After this, it brings entry 1 to a close. I'm not sure how the player got a hold of this installer disc. I do have a feeling that our player is not supposed to have this though. The entry is pretty straightforward, it just sets the stage for the rest of the ARG and shows us the things that our player will commonly run into, whatever it is. Let's move on to the next entry, waterholedemo.mov. In the opening, we see a very early version of the Roblox home screen. This tells us what this installer disk is for. It looks to be used for testing purposes based on the demo button and how the GUI looks unfinished. Or it just looks like shit. I get some eerie vibes from the window of the disc also. At the top left, it reads Roblox Disk Launcher in a very weird way. The player tries to click the games and the avatar button, but they do not work. After this, the player clicks the demo button and is teleported back to the game. He goes back behind the house where he saw that red thing on the ground and finds a button with the words listen on top of it. The audio is very glitchy, but I believe it says, meet me under the water. I'm guessing the player listens and goes to find a body of water. He goes up this ramp that leads to a lake. He goes through the water for some time before falling into the water and teleporting to this dark room with a person staring at him. This person could be what we saw at the end of entry 1. Then, this unknown player begins to speak.
Hey buddy, it's me, your old father. Don't you recognize me? It's been a while, but I'm so happy to see you again.
The unknown player is apparently our father, which is difficult to get my head around. The voice does sound similar to the button we found earlier, which would make sense because of what the button said, meet me under the water, and we did go under the water to find him. After this, the video glitches out and brings the second entry to a close. This entry gave us more information about this installer disk. It seems to be corrupted and not for the public eye. The disk wants the player to keep on joining the demo place for some reason, not letting him go into any different place in the menu. It's also obvious that the demo place changes on its own, almost like it's alive or being controlled by our father. The father then explains that it's been a while, possibly saying that our player knows this person. Let's move on to entry 3, father.mov. We spawn right back into the demo place. Our player, knowing that there is something else in the game, he types in the chat, hello. I'll do whatever it takes. Our player might mean that he'll do whatever it takes to understand who he is or know more about this place, but that's just my guess. He walks out into the distance and sees something emerging from the fog. I can't make anything of it, but maybe it's just another small house of some sort. After seeing this happens. A lot just happened in those few seconds. Going frame by frame, we can see red text saying free me over and over again. In the next frame, we see the father that we saw in the dark room. In the frame after that, we see him again, but with something different, a logo on his chest that looks like a pentagram. Above him, we see a string of numbers and letters. After researching, this is a hexadecimal string that can be decoded. It reads, get me out of this glass prison. The last frame that we see is the father in a head-shaped circle. Maybe this is the glass prison that they were talking about. We're then met with a pink screen that looks to be an anti-privacy screen. This screen proves that even more that our player is not supposed to have this disc. If you don't know what an anti-privacy screen is, let me explain. It is a screen that will will show up when someone is pirating a video game or any other piece of media. In simpler terms, the person is not supposed to have that media, which is what is happening here. The top left translates to break the glass, set me free, the cage opens. That way you'll understand. After this, the player is teleported to a red area. He is facing a big glass head of some sort. He turns around and is jump scared by the father, and that brings entry 3 to a close. This entry is very good. It builds upon the installer disk and how the player is not supposed to have it by showing the anti-privacy screen. It gives us more information about the father character and how he's trapped and needs to be set free. I'm guessing that the glass prison is the installer disk. The person, or our father, has been stuck in here for a long time and is desperate to get out. Now that our player has found the disk, the father character is trying to get our player's attention and begging to be set free. He sees it as his only chance on getting out, but this is just a theory. Don't even say it. Let's move on to the fourth entry, watergrave.mov. The demo place has changed a lot. The house has collapsed and is flooded with water. The player walks in the opposite direction of the house and climbs up a small hill. He finds a bridge that takes him to a button on the wall. He clicks the button and the atmosphere becomes dark. He walks back to the house and finds a hole in the ground. This hole takes him to a hallway which leads to a door that makes his recording glitch out once again and teleports him to the other side of the door. I think that it takes him to a different game because of how the force field goes around him, which happens when you join a Roblox game. The music in this area also changes, which is another hint that this area is much different. The new area seems to resemble a home because of the furniture. You can see couches, tables, and beds. Eventually, the player comes across the father, breaking the glass prison from before. He then breaks it and he chases after our player saying this.
Where do you think you're going, Jacob? You can't escape me!
Yeah, that was weird. We finally learn what our player's name is, Jacob. The video glitches out again, and that brings entry 4 to a close. This may be a stretch, but I think there might be a connection here. The fact that this person is described as our father, and how the area is filled with things you'll find in a household, and how the father knows Jacob's name, it makes sense that this person is Jacob's father, and how he used to live with him. I guess we haven't seen him for a long time by him saying, it's been a while from before, but this information isn't set in stone. We still have a lot to go. Without further ado, let's move on to entry 5, fathersgifts.mov. Jacob joins the demo place once again, and he is greeted by his father saying, "You came back." The surprising thing is the way that his father communicates with Jacob, and it isn't through game chat, it's on the screen. It's almost like the father is controlling the game. The father explains that he is giving gifts to his son, to which Jacob replies with, "Thanks, Dad." In the house, there's a photo of two people in it. I'm guessing it's Jacob and his father, but I can't tell because of how their faces aren't there. The father leaves Jacob a bed also. The father does this so that Jacob doesn't have to leave. It's clear that his father wants him to stay. The father explains that there are more presents outside, which Jacob goes out to see. He is given a seesaw, so quote, so we can play together. There is another present on the bench, but Jacob goes behind the bench and we see a car upside down, which makes his recording glitch out once again. Man, Jacob needs to invest in some recording software, which is why OBS Studio is the sponsor of today's video. Nah, I'm just kidding, don't worry. It takes Jacob back to this menu screen of the installer disk, but this time he can click on the games tab. After doing so, it takes him to this yellow area, but it doesn't take long for Jacob's game to crash and he is sent back to the menu screen. But a message pops up saying, "Not allowed, Jacob," and then flashes the picture in Jacob's house of him and his father. I have no idea what happened to their faces, but thanks for the close-up, I guess. Then, that's the end of entry 5. I'm really interested in that games tab. That yellow game just seems to be hiding something, but it seems like Jacob is not allowed there for some reason. But for now, let's just move on to the 6th entry, yellowtown.mov. As you can tell from the title of this entry will focus mainly on the yellow game that we saw earlier. Jacob walks through various hallways seeing Roblox dummies stuck in the walls. For the latter half of this episode, it's just Jacob exploring the area. Eventually, he notices a jail above one of the walls that he tries to go explore, and he finds a ramp that takes him up. Throughout Jacob's exploration of this place, there's furniture just like before. Jacob then comes across a gated bridge. After this, he notices something moving. It's a red person that comes toward him and says something. I can't make it out though. The game crashes once again and Jacob is taken back to the demo place where his father instantly speaks to him. His father asks where he's been, which Jacob replies, "I'm sorry, I was busy." It's obvious that Jacob doesn't want his father to know that he was in the Yellowtown game. His father then asks a really out of the blue question. "Do you trust me, Jacob?" Jacob replies with, "LOL, of course, Dad, why do you ask?" And then his dad says that he was just curious. The father mentions that he forgot to open a present from the last entry. Jacob goes back behind the bench again, and his father seems to get nervous and defensive. It's almost like there's something over there that his dad doesn't want him to see. When Jacob clicks on the present, it takes him back to the dark area and then brings entry 6 to a close. Jacob's father is sketchy. On one side, his father is giving him gifts so that he can stay with him, but on the other side, he is hiding something from Jacob. Like I said before, when Jacob goes into an area his father doesn't want him to be in, he gets defensive and tries to make him go away from there. Example of this are in the Yellowtown game and the upside down car behind the bench. With all that in mind, let's move on to entry 7, strangefiles.mov. Jacob told his friend about this disc, and his friend said to look at the files, and this is what he found. First off, Jacob found a video file which is named the promo video. It goes on to show the logo of this Roblox installer disc. As we can see, it is a blue shaped head, exactly like we saw earlier. A text then shows up giving us a description on what the installer disc is used for. It reads, "The Living Worlds project strives to increase the physics engine realism with more accurate and realistic applications of gravity, water, and wind, and even more true-to-life NPC characters for games." After this, we get insight on how the NPCs work. It reads, "Smart NPCs. NPCs will be programmed with real personalities that will make them more interesting and realistic to speak to." This gives us an explanation on what's happening with Jacob and his father. The father is an NPC programmed into the game, made to be as realistic as possible. That is how Jacob can speak to him in chat and have him reply like a human being. After what we saw, the Living Worlds project is a success. But then the video glitches and we get more information. It reads in red text, "Living souls. NPCs will be programmed with real souls. They put us here and the glass man killed us." From this, I now understand why the father character is so realistic. It's Jacob's real father's soul in that NPC. It then shows an animation of an NPC driving test. This is what happens. Here's my theory. Jacob's father in real life died in a car crash, and some way, somehow, his soul was used to make this NPC in the installer disc as realistic as possible. So his soul is trapped in this demo place, or the glass prison, if you want to call it that. The promo moves over like the crash wasn't a big deal, and the video ends. Jacob also explains that there was a TXT file, and that had the phrase, "Dark Home Water Terminal." Lastly, Jacob found a cover for the Japanese gaming magazine that looked like this. Thanks to this comment under the video, we can see what the Japanese translated to. It reads, "Your father died in a traffic accident, Jacob, and the glass man is not you." After this image, entry 7 comes to an end. This is my favorite entry so far. The one thing I'm still wondering is how his father's soul got into the installer disc game, if that's what's happening here. But let's move on to the next entry, questions.mov. This is an interesting episode because nothing really happens. After a full episode explaining what this disc is used for, you think that the next episode will be crazy, but no, it's just Jacob walking around the demo place. The only things that are new are that he finds boxes on top of a trampoline that helps him get over a hill, and this water area with some closed off areas. It's almost like a break between entries. This could just be me, but it almost feels more creepy without seeing the father or anything scary. Yeah, I think it's just me. After figuring out the information in the last entry, it's weird that nothing is confronting him. But overall, this entry is just Jacob exploring the area. Let's move on to the next entry, gates.mov. This entry begins right where Jacob left off. I'm not sure why they needed to split it up between two entries, but let's move on. He comes to a lever on the wall, then flicks it. After this, he goes to see what it did first. He checks on the blocked area in the water, and nothing changed. But then, this happens. I guess he tapped out for this, but we've never seen him do this before. He goes back into the Yellowtown game where he sees the gate blocking the bridge has been opened. He sees various dummies flopping around and then comes to a bridge made by the dummies. I don't know how this person came up with this. He then comes across another gray bridge which takes him to a prison. This prison is holding a yellow person that we haven't seen before. The game glitches out and the prison turns into another lever. After clicking it, he walks back to the bridge and sees that the gates have been drawn up again and the entry just ends abruptly. I can't seem to find anything weird about this this entry. It just seems to be more exploring from Jacob. The only thing I can get out of it is the caged Robloxian, but even that has no meaning to us. But let's just move on to the next entry, stonemen.mov. After clicking the second lever from the last entry, Jacob goes back to the blocked off passageway from before, and this time it's opened. When he goes inside, he falls into the water and his screen goes black. After this, he is taken back to the underground area from the entry watergrave.mov. He then goes to where he saw the glass prison and falls again into the water. At first, it brings him to the dark area, but then it teleports him to a new area that we've never seen before. This area also has furniture scattered around, which is a repeating theme. Eventually, Jacob comes across a lever down a hallway. He flicks it, then goes to see what it did. He then comes across gray dummies in the middle of the room. I'm guessing that these dummies are the stone men referenced in the title, but one stone man is holding an axe, which is weird. But then we find out. As he looks away from it, it moves on its own. It seems to be working as weeping angels. Jacob then finds a lever and he flicks it. After this, he starts getting chased by the stone man with an axe. As he runs, he finds the yellow person in the prison that we saw in the last entry. Jacob, I'm guessing, was hit by the stone man and the screen goes red, and the player in the prison disappears. As he explores more, he comes to find a wall that can be pushed over. Behind this is another lever that opens a new area. If you listen to the music playing in the background, the more he explores, the more static it gets. The music glitches and completely cuts out. Jacob then finds a couch that he sits on, and then this happens. When the recording glitches, at the bottom left we see the phrase, the pale horse. After some research on this phrase, I got this according to Wikipedia. The pale horse symbolizes the personification of death. The pale horse can also be found in the Bible, in Revelation chapter 6 verses 1 to 8. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." I looked, and before me was a pale horse, its rider named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over fourth of the earth, to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and the wild beasts of the earth. I'm not sure how the pale horse relates to this, but it could be how his father is dead, but I'm not 100% too sure. After this, Jacob is teleported to the dark area once again. This time, we see the stone man and Jacob's father. Somebody is whispering, and I can't distinguish what they're saying. After this, the entry comes to a close. This entry was amazing. I'm wondering who that yellow person is in the prison. They've popped up twice now and they have to be important. Anyway, we should move on to the next entry, tattooedbodies.mov. When Jacob joins, he notices a big difference in the demo place. Everything else seems to be sunken except for the hill and the path leading to the house. He goes in the direction of the hill and sees dummies stuck in the grass. There is text on their body parts, which I'm guessing is a reference to the title Tattooed Bodies. The video is in a low resolution, so it's difficult to see. Here are the things that I could decode on the text. There is red text that seems to be in a different language. When I translated it, I got, huh? That's definitely very wrong. If anyone could translate these letters, it'd be awesome. I also saw white text that consists of various numbers and letters. These are the three that I see. These are called hexadecimal ciphers. Sorry, I was mispronouncing it earlier. When these are decoded, they read the following. The first one translates to hi LOL, the second one translates to trapped, and the last one translates to too late. You can see binary and red text above these also. I really tried my best to translate the binary, but it just gets so blurry at some of the parts that I can't even make out if it's a 1 or 0. This also goes for this bit of text. There's just no frame that shows it completely. Jacob then falls off the path. As he falls, another bit of text is noticeable. This is an ASCII cipher, and it reads, "B, I am not." He walks into the house and climbs into one of the support beams. He then sees something on the wall. It reads, "Guess who?" The background audio fades out as he walks up to it, which is also really weird. The screen goes black and it shows this. an avatar moving in different directions. It seems to be doing Morse code. The only thing is, I can't figure it out if it's a dot or dash, so we need to leave that off for later. Then entry 11 comes to a close. I didn't expect this small entry to have this amount of content in it, and it has to be one of my favorite entries so far. The last thing I want to mention is in the video's description, there's a hexadecimal cipher that could be decoded. It translates to, is what I'm doing worth it? Do I want to know what I'm chasing after? I think it's kind of obvious, but this is Jacob. Let's move on to the next entry, messages.mov. I was surprised to see what I saw when I opened this entry. The entry begins with a real life perspective, which is something that I have never seen in a Roblox ARG before. The person, I'm guessing is Jacob, replaces the batteries on this tape recorder. After doing so, he puts the tape into the recorder, which plays an audio. The audio explains how they've been working on an NPC project mentioned in the entry strangefiles.mov. The person also explains how they've came up with a way to communicate with the souls, or the NPCs.
It's been going pretty well so far. We're coming up with a way to communicate with the souls in the game. It's going well. Or we've come up with a system of a sort of Morse code.
Standing up is a dot, and standing sideways is a dash. This relates to the Morse code we encountered in the last entry. We can solve the Morse code now. We can split up the Morse code into 2 sentences. I know this because how there's an audio gap between the Morse codes. Because of this, I will refer to them as codes A and B. Phrase A of the Morse code translates to, we are not, and phrase B translates to, it was the man. Interesting. Back to entry 12, the person in the audio explains that someone found this person in their game. He was red with a glass head and was trapped in a glass prison. The person is referring to Jacob's situation. The last thing that the person in the audio explains that he suspects that something is behind this whole thing.
Something can't just happen like that, just out of nowhere. There has to be someone behind it.
Then Jacob hits the stop button, ending the audio recording. Subtitles then appear on the screen, reading, that tape appeared on my doorstep yesterday. I don't know who the hell put it there or why. I just fear for my safety. Then the entry cuts to the dark area from before. Jacob walks through and eventually hears someone saying, Jacob, I have something to show you. We then see the father again. Everything that person in the audio was explaining is true. He is talking about Jacob's father. The entry then shows this area that looks like a mall of some sort. In the background, the father is still talking in a very weird way.
Dad, I'm really back.
Then the entry ends with this quote, there are things in this world I don't want you to see yet, but I know you will see it eventually. After that, entry 12 ends. This entry is so cool. I can't believe that we went from just a game to things that are happening in real life. The biggest thing that we got from this episode is now we can communicate with the souls in the game. Let's move on to the next entry, gardenterminal.mov. Jacob opens the demo place once again and is met with grass covered in flowers. He explores more and then types in the chat, hello. I'm guessing he's calling out for his dad. But then music fades in. This music in the background adds so much to this entry. It sounds like Cornfield Chase from the Interstellar soundtrack, but it's called The Elephant Vanishes. Go check it out. Also, I can't play it because I think it's copyrighted. He notices a person inside the wall. We've seen this before in the Yellowtown game. He then types in the chat, father? He then returns to the blocked off entrance in the water area and finds an elevator of some sort. He clicks on the button and it goes down, but then he ends up right back in the dark area. As he walks through the game, he finds a computer with multiple monitors. Then a subtitle on the screen pops up reading, I see you, Jacob, and then the entry ends. I don't have much to say about this episode. The only thing I could do is decode what is in the description. It reads, all I want is to just see my dad again. I don't care what I have to do. I just want to talk to him again without this stupid creepy shit in the way. Just one-on-one and actually see him. Let's move on to the next entry, fatherscolding.mov. Like always, we are in the demo place, but then his father begins to speak to him. He says, Jacob, why do you keep going there? There is nothing there for you. Jacob then responds, Father, I'm sorry. His father then says, good. But then Jacob says something very weird. I think I want to join you now. I have no idea where this came from, and this line is suggesting something that isn't good at all. His father responds, good, but I don't think you are ready. Jacob, being curious, asks, what do I have to do? And before the video cuts, his father says, I will show you. But before we move to the next clip, I need to describe what is going on in the background of the interaction. Like the last entry, we see a lot more dummies again. I don't know what these mean. They could be souls trapped in the disc, but who knows. On the wall, there is a hexadecimal cipher once again. It reads reads, "He creates from our destruction." It then takes Jacob to the mall from earlier. He walks through it and eventually the game crashes. It then shows a yellow version of the mall with a weird sound in the background. Apparently, this is a spectrogram. A spectrogram, according to Wikipedia, is a visual representation of the spectrum of frequencies of a signal as it varies with time. And this audio at the last part of the entry, it can be translated into words, but I have no idea how to do it. Luckily, the comments have came in clutch once again. According to Lakota, it reads, "He invaded our home and constructed his dreams with our bodies. He is the god of our world." I guess that something bad happened here, but I just don't know what. There is more information in the video's description. It reads, "I feel like I've seen this place. Call me insane, but it's too familiar. I swear this stupid disc is taking over my life. I just want to be back with him. My mom also hasn't been home in days. I can't have them both gone." Let's move on to the 15th entry, storefronts.mov. This entry opens with Jacob back in the Yellow Town. I think he decides to lock in because he's jumping around the gates with complete ease. I have no idea why he wasn't doing this before, but we move on. He then comes across a door which looks like an entrance to a store. As we can see, it is the same store/mall from before, this time with those damn dummies stuck in the wall. I have no idea what the hell they mean. He walks around for a bit and then sees a purple hat that stands out. Again, no idea what this is supposed to mean. We then come across this dummy as a store clerk, and he's saying something really hard to understand. The first part is impossible to understand, but the second part, I think he says, "are in the walls and they're made of us." This gives us a small hint on what are the dummies on the wall. Jacob then turns around and sees someone with a weapon, which I'm guessing is a stone man from earlier. The video then cuts to some Morse code. After decoding it, it reads, "shotgun." After the Morse code, Jacob spawns in a bedroom of some sort. We hear birds chirping in the background and it is very quiet. But then I came to the realization that this is Jacob's bedroom in real life. I noticed because of the computer, we can see the installer disc on the desk. Another thing, he can look up and down. That's cool, right? He then leaves his room and goes into the living space. The furniture looks identical to the ones we've seen scattered around the map. He then goes into the master bedroom. Something is playing on the TV that is reversed audio, and when you unreverse it, it says, "Why'd you have to join them?" Then we see a shotgun, then it plays this.
Don't you recognize me?
Going frame by frame, we can see many things happening. First, we see an image of the father character that we saw on the computer screen. Second, the monitors from before. Third, we see, I'm guessing, Jacob and his father with blood everywhere with text reading, "We loved red." The fourth image, we see a photo of the father that we've seen before. The fifth image, we see the installer disc that we saw on the desk. Sixth, we see a mall. Seventh, our subtitles reading, "Are you ready?" And those are all the images that are shown. When I reacted to this entry, I was in shock. I had no idea that it would take such a dark turn. This is 100% the scariest entry of the ARG. Let's move on to the final entry, coldpowder.mov. This is the shortest entry of the ARG. This episode is just a static shot of snow, and in the bottom corner, hexadecimal codes are shown. Putting them together, they form the sentence, "There was a loud bang and I ran over as fast as I could. His head was on the keyboard. Blood pooled off the desk. This game was running. A giant watched over him. Jacob committed suicide with that shotgun." The entry ends with this line, "I'm sorry, Jacob." And that's it. That's the end of CD Archives as we know it. CD Archives has a lot of content inside of it. I'm going to attempt to explain and summarize everything in this section of this video, so if you don't think my theory is correct, let me know and tell me what you think. Again, this is just my theory, this is not gospel. CD Archives begins with Jacob finding this installer disc for Roblox. The easiest way to describe it is to think of it as a custom mod. Jacob then begins to discover creepy things inside of the demo place. We learn about the character described to as our father. He asks him to set him free from this glass prison, which he eventually does. Jacob then learns about the different places in the demo, some place called Yellow Town. He then looks through the game's files and finds out that the installer disc is a project to make NPCs as realistic as possible, secretly explaining that they use real human souls to do so. We also see the POV of someone driving and eventually crashing their car. This is Jacob's father who died this way in real life, and his soul was put into the father NPC. Jacob continues to search through this game every day, and he begins to become obsessed. He gets this tape delivered to his doorstep in real life. The person person speaking is a developer working on the installer disk. He explains that weird things have been happening with it. Also, he explains that they've figured out a way to communicate with the NPCs using Morse code. Then, in the entry fatherscolding.mov, he speaks to his father about he wants to join him, but his father says he is not ready yet. Jacob says that the installer disk is taking over his life, and he wants to be with his father. He also mentions that he hasn't seen his mother in days, and he is scared that he will lose her too, proving that his father is no longer alive. In the entry storefronts.mov, an NPC using Morse code says the word shotgun, suggesting that Jacob uses the shotgun on himself to join his father. And he does. Going back to the picture in fathersgifts.mov, it brings a whole new meaning now. In the final entry, it explains that someone came rushing in when Jacob committed suicide and saw that someone was standing over him on the computer. My guess is that Jacob's soul went into the installer disk, like what happened to his father before him. After everything, it ends with calming music, a snowy terrain, and Jacob's father apologizing. That is the story of CD Archives from my eyes. This has to be one of the best Roblox ARGs I have ever seen. I had so much fun decoding the various ciphers in the entries. Something that's important to mention is the date when the final entry, coldpowder.mov, was uploaded. The date was September 10th, 2024, which was Suicide Prevention Day. Thanks for watching.